Listen, there is a half-open door in my life. It is not made of wood nor of metal. It is not the kind of door you see and can lock. It is more like a silent crack, a thin opening through which a cold breeze sneaks in, one that I cannot quite name, yet I feel it every time it brushes against me. Sometimes it happens at night, when I wake up at an hour where the world seems suspended, where everything around me is still, as if time itself is holding its breath. And in those moments, I sense that something inside me does not fit. I turn my eyes toward the person lying next to me, or I recall them in memory if they are not there, and a thought arises, one I do not want to think, yet it insists on returning. Am I really with the person I am meant to be with? That question did not appear today. It is an old messenger, one that my rational mind has tried again and again to silence. But my unconscious recognizes its shape, its voice, its familiar outline. And now I feel that tonight, with caution and with respect, I need to push that door open. Not to judge myself, not to judge anyone, but to return to myself. Because some truths are not meant to be shouted in public squares. Some truths are whispered quietly into the soul, and only when the soul is truly ready does it dare to hear them. If what I am saying resonates in the depths of your own being, then stay with me, because what comes next may change the way you see yourself. This is not about morality. It is not about right or wrong, guilty or innocent. The real question is symbolic. It is about the meaning of this person in my psyche, about the inner stage where invisible actors move and play their roles. Carl Jung once said that our inner life is populated by these unseen figures, the persona, the mask I wear before the world, the shadow, that part of me I deny, the anima or animus, that inner image calling me toward wholeness, and the self, the center toward which I walk endlessly, the destination I long for. Every relationship I have ever lived, especially the ones I call love, has been a theater where these archetypes appear and interact. Sometimes I believe I am loving another person, but in reality, I am negotiating with my own labyrinth. And that labyrinth, oh, it has beautiful walls, so beautiful that I can lose myself within it without realizing I am lost. That is why I need to listen with patience. I do not come to condemn myself. I come to unravel, to walk slowly, as if I were entering an ancient house with a candle in my hand, careful not to miss what hides in the shadows. And as I walk, I discover signs, 5 signs, that if I dare to look at them from within, might reveal to me that I am not with the right person. Not because they are bad, not because I am defective, but because our encounter is being held together by forces that pull me away from myself instead of bringing me closer to my own truth. And each sign feels like a new door. Each time I cross one, memories come back, smells, words, silences. I let myself feel them, because the body does not lie, and the senses never deceive. The first signal is subtle, almost elegant. It is the fading of my own center. At the beginning, I do not notice it. In fact, at first, I mistake it for love. I give in gladly, I adapt, I bend and mold myself, thinking it is natural. I tell myself, this is how relationships are built. But deep down, there is a fine line, a delicate thread, between being flexible and betraying myself. And my unconscious always knows when I cross it. When the persona, this social mask I wear, grows fat and strong at the cost of my soul, I begin to live outward instead of inward. I hear my own words, and I no longer recognize myself in them. Decisions stop coming from that intimate place within me and instead are driven by fear, the fear of losing the bond. My laughter sounds brighter than it feels. My opinions are trimmed to match the measure of the other person. Sometimes I even laugh differently. I look differently. I avoid words that once were my home. It is a soft erosion, almost invisible, yet relentless. Every concession takes away a grain of sand from the shore of who I am. And suddenly one day, I look around, and the sea is much closer. The body warns first. Have I noticed that I carry a tiredness that no sleep can heal, a fatigue that lingers even after long rest? There is a weight in my chest when I hear their steps, a slight nausea before I speak about certain topics. That is my shadow whispering. You are not here. You are disappearing. And when I step away, even if only for a few days, I rediscover myself. It is as though, behind the window, there had been a forgotten garden, one I stopped watering for months, and suddenly the flowers bloom again. Have you ever felt this? That you only recognize yourself when you are far from them? If so, then it means that when I am with them, I am not at home. And a relationship that exiles me from my own center does not truly love me. It uses me. It may use me tenderly, it may care for me, it may embrace me, but its purpose, even if it does not realize it, is only to keep my mask intact. And the mask, by its very nature, cannot touch the truth of what lies beneath without shattering. If that thought makes me uncomfortable, I must still stay here, because the second sign might give me the map, the hidden explanation of why all this happens. I should not leave the room yet. On the other side of this door, something begins to take shape. Second sign, the bond is nourished by a wound no one dares to face. We call it compatibility, chemistry, destiny. Jung would call it a dance between complexes, childhood magnets finding their perfect reflection. If as a child you learned that love carried the scent of worry, you will seek someone who makes you worry. If you learned that affection was earned by solving other people's problems, you will love those who need saving. And if your wound is invisibility, you will choose someone who cannot fully see you, because there, your shadow can keep living without being disturbed. The relationship becomes a ritual where each offers pain as an offering, expecting the other to heal it with gestures that never suffice. Look at it with honesty. How many conversations revolve around what is not right, what could be better, around promises of change that sound beautiful but repeat like a mantra each time a crisis threatens to leave it without air? There is something almost mystical about it, a synchronicity that feels like a sign from the universe, because just when you decide to leave, there appears a gesture, a coincidence, a call, and you say, "See, it had to happen. This is a message." Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is inertia, disguised as destiny. The unconscious is clever. When it fears the void, it creates symbols that sustain the theater. Dreams often reveal the truth of that hidden stage, carrying metaphors where water rises, time runs out, the voice gets stuck, or the house you enter is no longer yours. They show you how the relationship might be keeping alive an old story that no longer fits who you are. And when the wound becomes the glue, love turns heavier with every step. The painful and opening question is, am I here because I choose, or because leaving hurts? If you still doubt, then do not leave yet. The third sign is a light that does not know how to lie. Your dreams and your surroundings begin to correct you with an unsettling precision. Jung called synchronicity those meaningful coincidences that appear like constellations around our deepest decisions. Have you noticed how, in the days before a breakup, songs, phrases, and scenes suddenly emerge, speaking about letting go, about departure, about returning to yourself? Mistakes occur that end up revealing what no one wanted to acknowledge. The unconscious does not follow morality, it follows direction. It wants to integrate what belongs to your path, orchestrating small collisions, signs on the road that, if you pause, reveal a clear arrow pointing this way. It is not superstition. It is a symbolic reading of the world. If every time you get close to someone, things break, plans collapse, your body weakens, or you feel absent from yourself, there is a pattern that cannot be explained only by chance. What expresses itself there is a deeper order reminding you of what you are not willing to face directly. Pain, discomfort, and interruptions often shout what your words cannot. They reveal the weight of silence, the burden of repressed emotion, and the price of pretending. When you are forced to hold back your vulnerability, when you cannot cry, cannot ask, cannot show hunger, life itself begins to protest on your behalf. What appears as suffering is sometimes the clearest voice of truth. And when you allow the message to enter, alignment begins to replace resistance. There is no magic in this, only a return to coherence. Synchronicity also manifests through human mirrors. Someone suddenly names what you cannot say. A stranger unexpectedly tells you the story you did not know you were living. A book falls open on a page that unsettles you. If you feel that life is speaking to you with increasing volume, do not cover your ears. What is extraordinary rarely arrives with thunder. Almost always, it comes with persistent tenderness. Fourth sign, your growth frightens the relationship. This is a signal many confuse. They believe that a relationship that constantly demands sacrifice is mature. Yet there is a vast difference between sacrificing whims and sacrificing the seed of your expansion. If speaking your dreams aloud makes you feel ridiculous, if shining draws diminished gazes, if a part of you lowers the volume of your soul so the other does not feel less, beware. You are trying to protect a bond that feeds on your smallness. The unconscious detects it as a slow poison. Jung would speak here of the individuation process, the movement through which you become what you are. The right partner does not compete with that. They accompany, they give space, sometimes they push. The wrong partner, even loving you in their own way, proposes a pact. Stay the same. Do not change the script. The symbols of this stagnation are evident. Projects that never move forward when shared. Goals that are endlessly postponed. A talent you wrap in quotation marks each time you mention it. I write, well, I try. I wanted to study, but I am not sure anymore. I thought of starting something, though maybe it is not the moment. Watch how your phrases bend. If your body has learned to ask permission just to act, do not blame yourself. You are defending the peace of someone who fears losing you if you grow. And maybe that person does not even realize it. Perhaps they believe they are protecting you from failure, from risk, but the soul perceives the difference between advice and a cage. The sign grows stronger when you see that your fear of expanding and their fear of you expanding are invisible allies, and in that pact, both fall asleep. The problem is that life does not tolerate eternal sleep. It begins to send you disturbing metaphors, plants that wither, though watered, rooms that feel too small, clothes that no longer fit. Things break with uncanny ease, and you tell yourself they are coincidences, but not entirely. They are warnings, reminders that the price of keeping a relationship intact may be silently amputating yourself. If this resonates, breathe. The fifth sign is missing, the simplest and hardest to accept. And when you see it, even if the mind resists, the body will know. Fifth sign, peace feels foreign. With the right person, life is not a roller coaster of drama and euphoria. It is a river. There is current, there are stones, whirlpools, yes, but there is direction. With the wrong person, you learn to live in hypervigilance. You depend on the next message to be fine, the next gesture to feel loved, the next apology to sleep. You become addicted to modulating whatever the other gives, as if love were a volume knob in someone else's hands. Intense chemistry gets mistaken for destiny. It is common. The body reads adrenaline as important, but peace is not boring. It is a silence full of life, and that silence, when you are not with the right person, feels threatening. You need noise to believe there is something. Measure peace. Can you speak honestly without justifying every emotion like a legal defense? Can you sit in silence with them without invisibility swallowing you? Can you ask for something without birthing an eternal debt? Is there tenderness in conflict? Or is conflict a battlefield where the goal is to win, not to understand? When you err, are you simply human or a case file? When you step away for hours, do they return with curiosity or reproach? Listen to how these questions echo in your chest. The heart has its own logic. The rational mind, trained for survival, will create brilliant arguments to explain what hurts. It is not about lists, not about pros and cons. It is about inner atmosphere. With the wrong person, the weather changes violently. Unbearable heat that seduces, then a sudden frost that shatters you. With the right person, there are seasons, but the home has warmth. If you have lived so long in storm that calm irritates you, it is normal to doubt it. The new climate also needs to mature on your skin. And now, perhaps most important, these signs are not sentences, they are mirrors. You could see them and choose to heal within the bond. You could see them and choose to leave. You might even realize the wrong person was you with yourself, and the external bond only reflected that betrayal. All is possible. The language of the soul is not binary, it is dialogical. It speaks and listens at once. What we cannot allow is silencing it, because silencing it teaches your being that it is unwelcome in its own house. And the house of the self, your very essence, cannot be dismantled without consequence. Perhaps you want tangible proofs. Let me suggest symbolic exercises. First, write 2 undated letters, one titled Staying, the other Leaving. Do not rationalize. Write what your body feels in each scenario. How does your house smell if you stay? What music plays if you go? Which parts of you awaken? Which shut down? Do not aim to be fair. Aim to be honest. The soul does not need formalities, it needs truth. Second, draw your shadow. It is not childish, it is medicine. Draw clumsily, without technique, whatever of you this relationship suppresses, or whatever erupts excessively. Your anger, your tenderness, your sexuality, your ambition, your stillness. Look at the drawing as one looks at a wounded animal, with respect. Ask what it wants. Third, listen to your dreams for 10 nights. On waking, before lifting your head from the pillow, jot down what you remember. Do not interpret, only record. You will see patterns, a number repeating, a color insisting, a place returning. The unconscious does not speak English or Spanish, it speaks in images. Learn its grammar. It will guide you to decide not from fear, but from deep alignment with your direction. And let us speak of the archetype that most confuses us in love, the Savior. How sweet it feels to be needed. How powerful to feel indispensable. But that is not love. It is ego with the scent of altruism. The savior creates the victim. The victim creates the savior. A psychic marriage. While the savior clings to their cape, there is no room for a you who takes responsibility for yourself, nor for another who can grow. Sometimes the most loving way to accompany is removing the net. Other times, the most loving way to stay is releasing your need to fix everything. The inner mother-father archetype, when integrated, does not endlessly cover wounds. It sets limits. And limits are a form of beauty. If in your relationship limits are offensive, you are not in a garden, you are in a minefield. Every step is taken holding your breath, and no one blossoms with empty lungs. Let us return to persona. That mask has been useful. Thanks to it, you have friends, work, social stability, but persona cannot sustain love by itself. It is by nature a borrowed costume. True intimacy begins when the mask yields to the face with all its asymmetries. If your relationship rests on presentation, on the polished versions of each, conversations become overpainted, talking about weather, tasks, others, half-made plans, and each time you try to carve space for the sacred, that strange silence where truth appears, something interrupts, something urges, something tires. It is a sign that the mask does not want to expose what it deems imperfect. Yet true love feeds on imperfection. It does not decorate it, it inhabits it. If you fear crying messily, laughing oddly, desiring intensely, failing without excuses, you may not be with someone who offers an altar for the human. And then your soul, knowing what it needs, begins to crack inside. There is a myth that does harm. The right person completes you. Number. The right person accompanies while you complete yourself. That difference is the border between a romantic tale and individuation. When someone completes you, you lose your own legs. If they leave, you collapse. When someone walks beside you, each has their own skeleton, and the embrace is a luxury, not a caste. Ask yourself if your current love is luxury or caste. Question whether the we you built has space for two eyes that stretch, shift, sometimes want something else. Love that needs you not to change is not love. It is a fragile balance of fears. Love that sees you change and still chooses you, or releases you with the dignity of honoring what was lived. That love looks toward wholeness. If this shakes you, hold the tremor. It is the tremor of an old building having its foundations replaced. Nothing collapses. It adjusts. If there is something within you that still wants to walk beside me, I want it to be not out of habit, not because of routine, not because you've grown used to hearing my voice or following these words, but because you feel a genuine calling. Subscribing here is not a mere formality, not a meaningless click to satisfy an algorithm. It is something deeper. To me, it is almost sacred, because when you choose to stay, it becomes an intimate pact with your own process of growth, with the part of you that is willing to keep opening doors you once thought were locked. And when you leave a comment, I don't see it as a way of feeding numbers or statistics. I see it as you naming your own experience, and there is a strange power in naming. When you put into words what you are living, you are lighting a candle in the center of your own house. And perhaps without knowing, that little flame might also illuminate the path of someone who has been standing in the dark, too afraid to move forward. Your words, no matter how small they seem to you, might become a bridge that someone else was longing for, but didn't have the courage to cross alone. Sharing this video is not just about spreading content. It is about transforming your learning into an offering, into something that extends beyond yourself. It's a way of saying, what I have received, what has touched me, I am willing to give. And maybe that act of giving is also part of your evolution in the art of seduction. But not seduction as most people imagine it. Not the superficial attraction of appearances, not the need to wear masks or play games to be desired. I speak of the seduction of what is true, that which needs no disguise, that which draws others not by force, but because it resonates deeply with the essence of who you are. This is not about becoming a magnet for glances or empty admiration. It is about becoming a magnet for life itself. When your vibration aligns with your truth, when your being becomes coherent with your soul, you begin to attract not only people, but experiences, moments, and opportunities that nourish you instead of draining you. And that, to me, is far more powerful than all the fleeting attention the world could ever offer. So let me leave you with a simple yet profound reframing. One that does not aim to gather applause or approval, but to awaken in you those long, necessary silences where transformation truly happens. Do not waste your days searching for the right person, as if you were hunting for some protective amulet to shield you from loneliness. Instead, focus on becoming the kind of person who never betrays his own soul. From that place, the right person, the one whose presence belongs in your journey, will always know how to find you. And as for everything else, the pain, the confusion, the resistance you meet along the way, do not treat them as obstacles to erase. They too are part of the path. They shape you, refine you, and remind you of the depth of your own being. You don't need your road to be easy. You only need it to be yours. And when it truly is yours, when you finally walk on the path that feels like an extension of your own heartbeat, love itself will transform. It will no longer be a destination you strive to reach, no longer a place you arrive at when all conditions are met. Love will stop being a distant point on the horizon. Instead, it will become the way you inhabit your life. No matter who stands beside you, love will not be outside of you, waiting to be earned. It will be inside of you, flowing through every step, every breath, every moment you allow yourself to live fully awake. Human beings carry within them capacities that stretch far beyond what we consider ordinary, abilities that never appear on a resume and are certainly not taught in universities, yet they hold the power to transform entire lives and open doors to dimensions of reality that most people never even suspect exist. Carl Jung spent decades immersed in the study of what he called higher psychic functions, potentials that lie dormant in every human being, but only awaken fully in those who have engaged in deep inner work. The kind of work that confronts the unconscious and integrates the neglected parts of the psyche. These abilities are not supernatural in a fantastical or magical sense. They are natural developments of the deeper layers of human potential, capacities that begin to emerge when the psyche reaches certain levels of internal cohesion and integration. When a person becomes psychologically whole, when they stop living fragmentado between masks and fears, something within them opens. Jung believed that under such conditions, aspects of consciousness become more fluid, more permeable, allowing access to forms of perception that go far beyond logic or the five senses. Today we'll explore the 5 signs that indicate you may possess a genuine spiritual gift and how to nurture it without falling into the traps of ego inflation or self-deception. Traps that Jung warned were not only common, but dangerous. Although Jung was deeply grounded in scientific methodology, he also understood that the strictly materialistic worldview is insufficient to explain the totality of human experience. He studied phenomena such as telepathy, precognition, and what he referred to as absolute knowledge of the unconscious, moments in which a person perceives something with striking clarity, despite having no logical reason to know it. He did not believe these experiences were illusions or tricks. He saw them as real expressions of the psyche's capacity when it is functioning at deeper layers of awareness. Through decades of clinical work, he encountered patients who demonstrated remarkable intuitive knowing, and he himself experienced episodes in which he knew specific details about situations or people without any conventional source of information. However, Jung was also emphatic in warning about the danger of psychic inflation. When the ego identifies with these abilities, when it believes it is special or superior because of them, the gift becomes distorted and can even lead to psychological collapse. True spiritual gifts, Jung insisted, are humble. They do not serve the ego, they serve the self, this larger, deeper center of the psyche that seeks wholeness rather than superiority. When someone truly carries a spiritual gift, they rarely feel exceptional. They simply feel aligned, connected, and responsible for using that gift with integrity. The first sign that you possess a spiritual gift is the consistent experience of knowing things about people or situations without any logical evidence or explanation for how you know them. You meet someone for the first time, and something inside you immediately senses their story, their wounds, their hidden strengths. You walk into a room and perceive emotional residues of what happened there long before anyone says a word. You think of someone unexpectedly and soon discover they were in need or going through distress right at the moment they crossed your mind. This is not magical thinking, fantasy, or coincidence disguised as intuition. Jung documented numerous cases in which this kind of direct knowing turned out to be strikingly accurate, far too accurate to be explained by chance. He himself repeatedly experienced such knowledge in his practice, moments when he perceived elements of a patient's inner life that had never been spoken aloud. His explanation was that under certain psychological conditions, the individual psyche becomes attuned to the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the mind that contains information far beyond personal memory or ordinary experience. Jung's work on synchronicity further expanded this understanding. He proposed the existence of an acausal connecting principle, a mechanism through which inner experiences and outer events align not through cause and effect, but through meaning. When your psyche becomes sufficiently tuned to this symbolic dimension, you begin to perceive these meaningful connections as if they were part of a hidden network surrounding you. It feels like accessing an invisible field of information that most people are unable to detect because their consciousness is too scattered or too bound to the rational mind. If this happens to you regularly, if your intuitive impressions frequently prove accurate in ways that seem statistically impossible, if you simply know things without knowing how you know them, if your insights arrive with a clarity that bypasses logic yet later reveals itself as true, then you carry within you a genuine spiritual gift of expanded perception. And this gift is not an anomaly. It is a sign that your psyche has opened a channel to deeper layers of reality, a reminder that consciousness is far more vast than we have been taught to believe. The second sign appears when your very presence seems to have a healing or transformative effect on others, even when you're not doing anything in particular to provoke it. Jung observed that certain individuals, especially those who have gone through a profound process of integrating their shadow and engaging in deep inner work, begin to develop what he described as a healing psychic field. It isn't that these people consciously try to heal anyone. Rather, their own inner wholeness creates an atmosphere where others naturally feel safe enough to start their own healing journeys. This transformative influence operates through what Jung referred to as archetypal resonance. When you have brought together the fragmented aspects of your psyche, when you've reconciled inner opposites, embraced your wounds, and learned to live from a place of psychological completeness, you emit a particular kind of frequency. Others, especially those who are unconsciously ready to face their own inner world, begin to resonate with that frequency almost instantly. They don't need to understand it intellectually. Their unconscious recognizes in you a reflection of who they could become. Your presence becomes a mirror, reminding them at a deep, instinctive level of their own possibility for wholeness. People might start seeking you out when they're in the middle of a crisis, even if they can't explain why. They may feel calmer when you're around, more grounded, or suddenly clearer about something that had been troubling them for months. After spending time with you, they often report insights, emotional shifts, or a sense of relief that doesn't logically match the simplicity of the interaction. It's not because you gave them a profound speech or performed any therapeutic technique. It's simply that your integrated self activates something dormant within them. Jung called this dynamic the role of the wounded healer, the idea that those who have walked through their own suffering without collapsing under its weight become capable of holding space for the suffering of others, not by fixing them, not by carrying their pain, but by embodying the possibility of transformation. If you notice that people change in your presence, that they come to you during difficult moments, that they feel better even though you did nothing outwardly remarkable, you may carry the spiritual gift of a healing presence. This gift requires humility, because the ego can easily inflate itself and whisper that you are special or superior. But the truth is different. You are a channel, not the source. Your inner work has created a space where healing becomes possible. But you are not the healer. The psyche itself is the healer. You are simply someone who has learned not to interfere with its natural movement toward wholeness. The third sign appears when you receive information through dreams that later manifests in reality in specific and verifiable ways. Jung revolutionized the understanding of dreams by showing that they are not merely the brain processing random fragments of daily life, but direct communications from the unconscious. He discovered that certain individuals, especially during periods of intense transformation, received dreams that contained prospective information, glimpses of future events, or symbolic previews of realities that had not yet taken shape. This is not fortune-telling in a mystical sense, but what Jung described as the prospective function of dreams. The unconscious is not confined to linear time the way the conscious mind is. It can perceive patterns, emotional trajectories, and psychological shifts before they become visible to the waking mind. A dream of rising water may foreshadow a coming emotional crisis. A dream involving construction might precede a major period of rebuilding in your external life. A dream featuring a particular person may come before a significant meeting or relationship that plays a meaningful role in your journey. Jung meticulously recorded his own dreams and later realized that many of them contained information he could only understand in hindsight. Dreams he initially dismissed as symbolic turned out to be almost literally prophetic. Others that seemed to speak only about his personal situation were actually preparing him for insights about the collective unconscious that would emerge much later. The unconscious had been guiding him in ways he couldn't comprehend at the time. If your dreams often contain details that later align with real events, if you've learned to distinguish between ordinary processing dreams and those with a forward-looking quality, if you've observed patterns in your dream journal that reveal predictive elements, then you possess the spiritual gift of heightened dream perception. Your unconscious is not only speaking, it is guiding, preparing, and revealing the deeper movements of your psyche long before your conscious mind catches up. The fourth sign, and this one is especially profound, is that you begin experiencing what Jung described as synchronicities with a frequency that defies any casual explanation. But before we go deeper, it's essential to understand what truly separates a genuine synchronicity from the ego's tendency toward magical thinking. Many people confuse coincidence with meaning, but Jung's insight was far more subtle and far more transformative. If what I'm describing resonates with you, take a moment to give this video a like, so more people with emerging spiritual abilities can find this knowledge and learn how to discern authentically. Jung defined synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence between an internal psychic event and an external physical event, two occurrences that have no causal relationship and yet are connected through meaning, symbolism, and emotional impact. It is the psyche communicating with the world through symbolic alignment. Not every coincidence is a synchronicity. When the ego becomes desperate for validation, it starts pointing at random events and interpreting them as signs. But true synchronicities have a luminous quality to them. They arrive with emotional intensity, symbolic precision, and a sense of inevitability that is impossible to confuse with ordinary chance. You might spend the day contemplating a specific idea, only to encounter a stranger who hands you a book that addresses that exact topic in depth that very same night. You may wrestle with a complex question that seems impossible to answer, and suddenly a bird outside your window behaves in an unusual, almost symbolic way, offering the exact shift in perspective you needed. You might find yourself stuck at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take, and suddenly a series of unrelated events aligns so precisely that the direction becomes unmistakably clear. Jung himself lived through a famous synchronicity while a patient was describing a dream involving a golden scarab. At that exact moment, a real scarab beetle, extremely rare in Switzerland, began tapping on his window. It was the physical world mirroring the symbolic world with uncanny precision. Genuine synchronicities are not forced, chased, or mentally manufactured. They are received. They appear when you are aligned with the self, when the ego has quieted enough to perceive the subtle messages rising from the unconscious and manifesting through the outer world. If your life is filled with these luminous experiences, if you've learned to distinguish them from ego-based fantasy, if they guide you without you becoming dependent on them, then you carry the spiritual gift of living synchronistically. This is one of the deepest signs because it suggests that you've reached a level of psychological integration where the boundary between your inner world and the physical world becomes permeable in sacred ways. The fifth sign is that you can enter altered or expanded states of consciousness naturally, without the need for substances or extreme techniques. Jung referred to this as the capacity for active imagination, a conscious dialogue with the contents of the unconscious. But beyond this specific method, some individuals have a natural ability to shift their consciousness across different layers of reality. You may sit in silence and access what feels like memories that do not belong to this lifetime. You might slip into states where you perceive energetic patterns or symbolic information surrounding certain situations. You may experience moments of profound unity with everything, where the boundaries of the ego dissolve temporarily and you enter what mystics have long described as non-dual awareness. Jung extensively studied these altered states and saw them not as signs of pathology, but as natural developments of latent human potential. However, Jung also issued strong warnings about the dangers of these states. If the ego is not sufficiently strong and grounded, these experiences can lead to fragmentation, dissociation, or even psychosis. And if the ego becomes inflated, the person may start believing they are special or chosen, rather than recognizing that they are simply accessing universal human capacities. True spiritual gifts are accompanied by humility and discernment, not by self-importance or grandiosity. If you can enter and exit these states consciously, if they ground you rather than destabilize you, if they offer useful insight without inflating your ego, if after these experiences you become more functional rather than less, then you possess the spiritual gift of expanded consciousness. This gift carries immense responsibility because with it comes the temptation to identify with transpersonal experiences instead of integrating them with humility. And it is absolutely crucial to understand that having spiritual gifts does not make you superior to anyone else, nor does it guarantee that you are a good person. Jung was emphatic about this. Spiritual development and ethical development are not the same path. A person may possess extraordinary psychic abilities and still be emotionally immature, destructive in relationships, or morally questionable. Spiritual gifts are tools, and like all tools, they can be used constructively or destructively. Jung warned repeatedly about psychic inflation, the moment when the ego fuses with the gift and begins believing it is inherently special or chosen. This is extremely common in spiritual communities, where people with genuine abilities start imagining themselves as gurus or saviors. The truth is that these gifts simply emerge naturally when enough inner work has been done. They do not make you special. They make you responsible. If you recognize these gifts in yourself, your task is not to brag about them or use them to feed your ego. Your task is to cultivate them quietly, with humility, while continuing the lifelong work of shadow integration. Without this psychological grounding, the gifts can easily become traps for the ego. Jung met many people with true psychic abilities who were psychologically fragmented because they developed the gifts without doing the work of individuation. The individuals who carry real spiritual gifts are often humble, frequently uncertain of their own abilities, sometimes even frightened by what they perceive. They do not seek followers or external validation. They use their gifts in service of the self and of others, often quietly and without recognition. If you have these gifts and find yourself craving for others to know about them, that is a sign that the ego is inflating and that more inner work is needed. If you want to continue exploring spiritual gifts from a Jungian perspective, without falling into egocentric mysticism, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every day we delve deeper into these mysteries with psychological honesty. This work requires radical discernment, as the landscape of spiritual gifts is full of traps for the ego. Jung taught that the ultimate goal is not to develop powers, but to realize the self, to become whole. The gifts that appear along the way are side effects, not the destination. If you focus on the gifts, you lose your path. If you focus on integration and wholeness, the gifts emerge naturally and are used wisely. This is the difference between a mature spiritual path and the immature chase for special abilities. So if you recognize these 5 signs in your experience, if you know things you should not be able to know, if your presence heals, if your dreams are prophetic, if you live synchronistically, if you access expanded states of awareness, then yes, you do possess spiritual gifts. But remember that these gifts come with immense responsibility. Use them in service of the self, not the ego. Cultivate them with humility, not with arrogance. And never forget that they are tools for individuation, not substitutes for it. The true gift is not the capacity to do extraordinary things. It is becoming who you truly are, and through that authenticity, serving the wholeness of life in the unique ways only you can. You're not here by coincidence. Something deep within you brought you to this video at this exact moment, and by the time you finish listening, you'll understand why. While many people lose sight of the deeper origin of their existence, there are souls that enter this world with a quiet purpose, a kind of internal compass. It's not something easily explained with words, but it's something you can feel with profound intensity. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung once spoke of a wisdom that lies beyond the conscious mind, a part of ourselves that already knew the way, long before we ever took our first steps. And if you're watching this, it's likely because your soul isn't lost, but rather following through on a deep, ancient agreement, a choice made long before your birth. There are signs, and once you begin to notice them, everything starts to make sense. One of the first signs is this. From an early age, you sensed that life had a deeper meaning. You weren't like the others. While those around you were easily distracted by superficial things, you felt a strange kind of longing for something you couldn't name. You asked questions that didn't have easy answers, and you sought meaning in even the smallest of gestures. There was something within you, pulling you to look beyond what the eye could see, to sense what others overlooked. This wasn't pride or arrogance. It was a subtle memory, a kind of echo from your soul that whispered you were here for something greater. And even if that made you feel different, misunderstood, or even isolated at times, you could never silence that inner feeling. It was a quiet certainty that your path would never look like everyone else's. And though that certainty may have been uncomfortable at times, it stayed with you, like a flame that burns softly in the depths of your being. The feeling that there's something more wasn't something you were taught. It was something you were born with. While others were entirely focused on the external world, you were already exploring your inner one. You asked questions no one else seemed to consider, about suffering, about the meaning of life, about the essence of the human soul. And you didn't ask these questions from a place of childish curiosity, but rather from a wisdom that felt ancient, as if it had followed you here from somewhere far away. Souls like yours don't need external proof to know that their life has purpose. There's something inside that constantly affirms it, even when the world outside doesn't understand. Maybe, as a child, you felt like you were watching the world from the outside, like what was happening around you couldn't fully explain what you were feeling inside. That disconnection wasn't emptiness. It was your soul reminding you of the agreement you made, that this life wasn't your first, and that you were walking the path of awakening once again. And that's why, even in the face of challenges, doubts, and inner turmoil, something within you always pushed you forward. A kind of instinct that you couldn't justify with logic, but that you always knew was real. That sense of being on a mission, even if you didn't know exactly what it was. That feeling that you needed to experience certain moments with depth, and that every step, even the painful ones, was guiding you towards something meaningful. This is one of the clearest signs that your soul chose this path long before you arrived. Because this life isn't just about living, it's about remembering why you came. And when a soul makes that silent choice, that sacred commitment before birth, the world can often feel heavier, slower, more confusing. While others are learning everything for the first time, you're remembering how to feel with the soul, how to see with depth, how to endure and understand processes that most people don't even have words for. This can create a strange kind of disconnect from reality. You might be surrounded by people and still feel distant. You might be doing everything that's expected of you, yet feel like you're betraying your own truth. And that's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because your consciousness is wired to a higher plane. Your sensitivity allows you to perceive dimensions that others can't see. Maybe you've also noticed that certain pains hit you harder than they seem to hit others, that losses, emotions, and even silences affect you deeply, almost as if you've lived them all before. That's because souls that choose to come with conscious missions do so, knowing that they'll need profound sensitivity to fulfill them. And while that sensitivity may have made you vulnerable, it's also the most powerful tool you carry within. You knew all of this before arriving. Your soul didn't choose comfort, it chose purpose. And that choice reveals itself in your earliest years, in the form of intuition, existential questions, and a way of perceiving the world that never accepted surface-level answers. You weren't meant to conform to what doesn't resonate with your spirit. You came to remember, to transform, to awaken something that was planted deep within you long before you were ever born. Second sign. You have gone through intense trials that defy rational explanation, yet hold profound spiritual purpose. These are not random misfortunes, but deeply intentional moments that your soul agreed to face long before you took your first breath. The souls that consciously choose their path before birth do not seek comfort, ease, or shortcuts. They know, at the deepest level, that certain experiences are essential. Essential to awaken dormant memories, to ignite hidden gifts, to refine their awareness, and to transform the very fabric of who they are. That's why, throughout your life, you've probably felt as if hardships strike without warning, suddenly, without reason, like life is testing you more than it tests others. And still, despite the chaos, despite the pain, something inside you has endured, not out of stubbornness or pride, but out of a sacred strength, an inner resilience that only awakens when everything else seems to collapse. It doesn't shout, it doesn't fight, it simply is, steady like a silent flame that refuses to die. Maybe you've faced unexpected losses, endings that tore you apart, emptiness so vast no one around you could understand it. And while others moved on, barely questioning anything, you felt the weight of each moment. Every painful experience didn't just hurt, it shaped you. It carved into your being like a chisel, not to destroy, but to reveal what had been buried under layers of forgetfulness, to uncover the truth that you were always meant to remember. These trials were never random. They came into your life because, at some point beyond time, your soul welcomed them. It knew that through them, you would expand, you would remember, you would find your way back to a deeper truth. A mission that, on the surface, may have seemed lost, but never really was. And now, looking back, you begin to see that those moments weren't punishments. They were sacred teachers, lessons you couldn't have learned in any other way. They pushed you inward when the outside world no longer made sense. They shattered the inner structures that were no longer aligned with your truth. They forced you to confront yourself, to strip away every illusion until all that remained was raw authenticity. The souls who choose such a path do not do so from ego. They choose it from the wisdom of eternity, from the knowing that pain, when moved through with awareness, does not destroy, it reveals. It does not weaken, it transforms. And you know this, because you felt it. There are experiences you knew somehow were not punishments, but activations. After every fall, something inside you awakened. Your vision changed, your empathy deepened, your sensitivity grew more refined, and your connection to the unseen became more intimate. Maybe no one around you understood this process. Maybe even you questioned it at times. But somewhere deep within, you knew. You knew that your pain was not in vain, that it was clearing the path for you to become who you truly are. Not the version of you created to survive the world, but the one who came here to remember, to heal, to expand the wisdom your soul already carried. And that kind of growth? It cannot be taught in books. It cannot be explained in words. It must be lived. It must be breathed. It must be embodied. And that is why you are not broken. You are becoming. You are in the middle of a sacred process. A process your soul chose long before your mind could comprehend it. These trials have been more than hardships. They've been hidden doors. They don't always appear as openings at first, but over time, you begin to realize, behind every loss, every breakdown, every shadowed chapter, there was a seed that could only take root in shaken ground. Because the souls that walk this path aren't looking for surface-level growth. They are seeking depth, and depth cannot be found in the shallows of life. It is found in the long silences, in the sleepless nights, in the cracks that cannot be hidden. You didn't become wise by accident. You became wise because life stripped away what no longer served you, so it could fill you with what you had forgotten. And even when you felt like you were reaching your limit, that quiet part of you, that ancient awareness, was always there, watching, holding, whispering, without words, that what you are living, you already knew, not with your mind, but with your soul. And it is that memory, that deep inner knowing, that keeps you moving forward. Not from force, not from resistance, but from a trust that blossoms in silence. A trust that grows when you finally recognize that even the hardest trials are part of a sacred agreement. One that your mind may not fully understand, but your soul feels with greater clarity each day. Third sign. You possess a sensitivity that goes far beyond the emotional. It is a perception that comes from the soul itself. It's not just that you feel deeply, it's that you perceive beyond what others seem to notice. You pick up on the energy of spaces. You sense what isn't spoken in a conversation. You intuit when something doesn't align with the truth, even if everything appears perfectly normal on the outside. And this isn't a coincidence. It's a clear sign that your soul came into this life with an awakened consciousness, with a level of sensitivity that isn't developed here on Earth. It's carried with you from before you were even born. It's the subtle memory of someone who has already walked this path before and has learned to read life through different eyes. You didn't arrive with this heightened awareness by accident. You came with it because you knew, even before you incarnated, that this human experience would be filled with illusions, that not everything would be visible. And so you brought with you internal tools to navigate a world where truth often hides beneath layers of appearances. This sensitivity acts as a channel. It connects you to people, to environments, to the unseen. And although it can sometimes feel like a burden, because everything affects you more deeply, reaches you more intensely, it is also your greatest guide. It is how your soul reminds you that you are not here to disconnect from what you feel, but to refine it, to transform it into guidance, into clarity, into a silent yet unshakable power. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, even if others have tried to convince you otherwise. It is a deep intelligence, a higher form of awareness. While many people react from noise and chaos, you perceive from silence. And even though this has often made you feel out of place, what it really means is that you're tuned into a more subtle dimension of existence. There are things you sense before they happen, shifts in someone's energy, endings that are announced without words, opportunities that are felt without any physical evidence. And although you've sometimes doubted yourself because you lacked tangible proof, your perception has never been wrong. It doesn't operate through the mind. It flows from the spirit. And that inner channel is active because your soul knew, before you were born, that you would need it. It knew that this life would bring challenges that logic alone could not solve. That's why your sensitivity is also a compass, one that points you toward what is real, toward what resonates with your truth. It's also why noisy environments exhaust you, why empty conversations feel uncomfortable, and why you can't remain for long in spaces where everything is shallow. Because your soul recognizes what is heavy, what is false, what is disconnected. And even if you can't always put it into words, you feel it. And that's enough. Your perception isn't broken. It's awake. And in a world that has fallen asleep, that can seem strange. But you are not here to blend in. You are here to remember that this sensitivity is not only part of who you are, it's one of the very reasons you chose this path. Your heightened perception has also led you to carry emotions that weren't even yours. You've felt the pain of others as if it were your own. You've been hurt by an unspoken word, by an avoided gaze, by an unexplained absence. And even when you couldn't name what you were feeling, you knew it was real. Your body registered it, your energy absorbed it, and your soul understood it from a place that needs no logic to validate it. Over time, maybe you tried to shut that sensitivity off, to fit in, to stop feeling so much, to protect yourself. But turning it off felt like abandoning your own essence, like losing the language through which your soul speaks. This sensitivity is also your gift, because it allows you to see the truth behind the masks, to understand what others deny, and to be a healing presence that doesn't seek answers, but connection. Not all souls choose to come into this world with such openness. It requires courage. It means walking through life without armor, with your soul exposed, with your senses heightened. But you chose it. And even though you may have experienced it as a burden at times, it is, in truth, a sacred tool. You are not here to harden yourself. You are here to refine this capacity even further, to turn your sensitivity into wisdom, into discernment, into service. Because to feel is not just to be emotional. It's to receive the truth of experience and allow it to transform you. Your sensitivity has also guided you through moments when logic had no answers. You've made important decisions because something inside you simply knew. Not because it was safe, not because someone confirmed it, but because that internal certainty was stronger than any external doubt. And when you look back, you realize that it was that voice, that quiet intuition that once felt so fragile, that protected you the most, aligned you the most, and held you the most when the rest of the world couldn't. That way of sensing has made you deeply perceptive, not just with yourself, but with others. You can read the energy of a room the moment you walk in. You can detect the inconsistency behind a forced smile. You can be there for someone without needing many words, because your soul doesn't require explanations. It needs presence. And that's why you've never been able to tolerate hollow relationships. You can't force yourself to stay where there is no truth, where emotions are denied, where the soul cannot speak. That rejection is not arrogance. It is energetic coherence. It is your soul choosing to protect its vibrational integrity. This way of perceiving, even if it has brought you pain, is a clear confirmation that your soul not only chose this journey, but came equipped with the exact sensitivity needed to walk it. Because it's not enough to just move through life. You have to know how to feel your way through it. And that you've carried within you long before you ever arrived here. Fourth sign. Life has led you time and again toward the inner path, even when you tried to escape it. Maybe you attempted to fit into what's considered normal, sought answers outside yourself, followed paths others laid out, but something inside you never let it happen. Every time you tried to distract yourself from the inner call, life found a way to bring you back to yourself. That return inward wasn't a coincidence. It was part of the agreement your soul made before being born. To always come back to center, even if you wander, even if you forget, even if it hurts. Some people go their whole lives without asking deep questions, but not you. Inside you, there's an invisible compass that can't stand disconnection, a kind of homesickness for truth that emerges every time you drift away from your essence. And no matter how hard you try, that part of you always pushes you to look within, to feel what you avoid, to face what makes you uncomfortable, to remember what you came here to do. It's not an obsession, it's a pact. And that's why, when you ignore that calling, life doesn't stay quiet. It starts to stir, to shake things up, to show you that what's outside can never give you what's already inside. That pull toward the inner road doesn't always show up gently. Sometimes it comes as a crisis, as losses that shake your foundations, as stages where everything you knew stops making sense. And even though it may feel like everything is falling apart, what's really collapsing is everything that can no longer hold the truth of your soul. That emptiness you feel is not a punishment. It's space. Space for the new to enter, for what's real to emerge, for what you forgot to remember to make its way through. Your soul didn't choose the easiest road, but it did choose the deepest one. And that depth demands a constant reconnection with yourself. That's why you can't stay asleep for long, because every time you do, something inside you dims. And when that light dims, life starts speaking to you in other ways. Discomfort, restlessness, existential fatigue. None of that is random. It's all a way to push you back to the center. That center isn't found outside, not in goals, not in approval, not in what others expect of you. Your center lives in the invisible, in the part of you that hears silence, that recognizes the signs, that knows every experience, no matter how hard, is part of your awakening. Not everyone hears that call, but you, no matter how much you try to ignore it, you always find yourself returning. And that return is not weakness, it's spiritual maturity. It's the soul remembering that no matter how far you've gone, you've never really been lost. You've just been coming home to yourself. And this constant return has given every phase of your life a deeper layer. No matter how ordinary things may look on the surface, inside, there's always something unfolding, a realization taking root, a quiet integration, a transformation that doesn't need to be visible to be real. Some seek their purpose in the outside world, but you found it in the intimate act of feeling again, of looking at yourself honestly, of recognizing your contradictions, of accepting your shadow without judgment, and embracing what you once rejected in yourself. This cycle of introspection isn't something someone taught you. It's in your nature. It's part of the wisdom your soul chose to bring with it, because you knew this life wouldn't be just an outer experience. It would be an inner journey, one where the deeper you go, the more clarity you find to help light the way for others. And maybe that's why you've often felt disconnected from the superficial, from what only seeks to distract, because inside you, there's a much older calling, a mission that doesn't shout but is always felt, a presence that reminds you again and again that your place in this world isn't just any place. It's the place where you can be yourself, without masks, without acting, without denying your truth. That's why you always return to yourself. And every time you do, you grow stronger, not like someone coming back wounded, but like someone who remembers, with more truth, with more presence, with more light. Fifth sign. You feel like your existence has a purpose, even if you can't quite explain it. You don't need external proof, or someone to validate it for you. There's something inside you that simply knows, a silent certainty that's always been there, like a seed that no matter how long it takes to bloom, never stops pulsing with life. It doesn't mean you've always had clarity. You've doubted, you've felt lost, even thought maybe you were disconnected from everything. But despite it all, the intuition that your life isn't just a coincidence has remained untouched. Because your soul didn't arrive here by accident. It came with intention. And that intention sometimes appears as unanswered questions, as a longing that nothing material can satisfy, as a restless feeling constantly pushing you to find meaning in every experience. It doesn't matter if the world understands or if no one else sees it. You feel it. You feel there's something you came here to offer, something only you can bring into existence, something that doesn't always have a clear shape, but is so alive within you that ignoring it would feel like betraying yourself. That sense doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the soul. And it's one of the clearest signs that you're not here just to pass through life, but to awaken within it. That purpose isn't always grand in appearance. It doesn't always translate into huge accomplishments, public recognition, or visible external goals. Sometimes it shows up in how you silently hold space for others, in how deeply you dwell in your own darkness, in the honesty with which you choose to live, even when the world pushes you in the opposite direction. You're not here to imitate someone else's version of success. You're here to be a witness of what's real. And that witness doesn't always make noise, but it leaves a trace. The way you walk through your story, the integrity with which you choose your path, the love with which you hold the unseen, all of it is part of the purpose your soul chose long before you arrived here. You may not have all the answers yet, but that doesn't mean you're far from your purpose. It means you're getting closer. Because real purpose isn't understood all at once. It's revealed in layers. With every moment of presence, with every truth you choose to honor, with every time you decide to keep feeling instead of shutting down. Your soul knew this path wouldn't be easy. It knew it would hurt sometimes, that you'd have doubts, but it also knew you had the strength. You have the memory, the sensitivity, and the awareness needed to fulfill what you came here to manifest. And the fact that you're here, listening to this, feeling something stir inside you, even if you can't explain it, is proof that this memory is still alive. You don't need to understand everything right now. You just need to keep awakening that part of you that's never forgotten why you're here. That quiet purpose has also been what held you together when everything else felt like it was falling apart, when you didn't know where to go, when you lost motivation, when no answers came. Still, something inside kept urging you forward. A subtle force that doesn't come from ego or willpower, but from a deeper awareness that transcends this life. And so, even when you felt out of place, that feeling wasn't a sign of being wrong. It was a confirmation of your direction. Because souls that come with purpose can't feel at ease in the superficial. They can't stay where there's no depth, and they don't rest until they begin to live in alignment with who they really are. Maybe many times you've asked yourself, why can't I just fit in? Why do things affect me so deeply when others seem unaffected? Why do I crave silence, truth, presence? It's because your soul didn't come here to live asleep. It came to awaken and to help others do the same, not through words, but through your energy, your presence, the way you move through life with awareness. That purpose is a frequency, and when you vibrate in it, everything begins to feel more aligned, more light, more real. Not because the world changes, but because you no longer need to deny yourself to belong. Your soul has already remembered why it chose this path. And now, all that's left is to walk it with more truth. Thank you for making it this far. If all of this resonated with you, it wasn't by chance. It was your soul recognizing what it already knew. Because no matter how many times you forget or how far you drift, the truth of who you are always finds its way back to you. Carl Jung believed that life doesn't begin the day we're born, but the day we choose to listen to that inner voice that's been waiting. And if today you feel that voice has awakened just a little more, it means your process has already begun. You don't need to understand it all. You just need to keep walking with presence, with honesty, and with the certainty that your soul chose this path with wisdom. If this message accompanied you, if you felt something shift within you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and let's keep going deeper together on this journey where soul and awareness meet. See you in the next video. Thank you for being here.